In this lesson, we're going to be importing our assets and setting up our After Effects project. Okay, so I'm just starting out here in 03_begin in your After Effects project files, and I'm going to be taking you through how to get started basically from scratch from this point. So this is a blank document, and you can just start in a blank project as well if that's what you want to do. So we're going to come over here to our project panel. I'll just right click, go to Import File. And I'm looking inside of that reference files folder, so you can kind of see how some of those things were saved that we created. So we started out with that Reefs graphics that just pretty much had everything in it. And then I saved out the infographic split at the end of the last lesson and went in and renamed all of the layers, lots of things. So this is going to be our main file that has all of those assets in it that we were working with in our last lesson. So I'm going to go ahead and import that now, but it's important that I don't just go ahead and click open. I need to come down here to where it says import as, drop that down and choose composition retain layer sizes. Now what this is going to do is it's going to give me a bounding box around each of those layers instead of making the layer size the entire size of the composition. And it's also going to keep anything from, if something was hanging off the artboard and not completely on it, I would be able to see all of that layer anyway. And it is also going to look at the composition size that we had for our artboard in Illustrator and use it as our composition size in After Effects. So lots of different things happen whenever you choose this option. That's what we're going to click. So go ahead and choose that and hit open. And this always takes a little bit whenever you have so many files trying to come in. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording while this tries to import everything, and it could take up to, a minute, maybe 2 minutes, depending on how fast your computer is, but it will come through. It just takes a bit just because that file is so dense, and now it's having to look at every single layer and bring them in as individual layers in After Effects. So we'll come back after this is completely loaded into my project. Okay, so that went ahead and loaded up into my project panel, and I'm going to go ahead and just double click this comp to open it up. Now this is going to take a little bit too, just to load in all of those layers so that we can see, just kind of like it would if you were trying to do a really extensive RAM preview. And you can also see, if I just scroll down through here, we've got 136 layers. So imagine, just from talking about our last lesson, how long it would take to get all of those pieces onto their own layers by hand. So running that script is definitely very beneficial. Now, I'm not going to make you wait and watch this just buffer, so I'll go ahead and pause it again just until all of those come in there, just so you can see what it looks like once it comes into After Effects. Okay, so it all made it in here, and you can see I have this set at it was set at a quarter res a moment ago. Now it's kind of downgrading that. Okay, so we're at a half res, and you can see that all of our pieces are here, that we're defaulting to a black background just because that was the color of the background, just by default here in After Effects. I can toggle on that transparency if you have a hard time seeing some of the darker elements, but everything is here that needs to be for our project as far as just what we were setting up in our last lesson. But we do have a few other things to import, so let's go ahead and bring those in now. So we'll come back over here to our project panel, right click, go to Import File, and I need to import all of these legend pieces. So right now you can see it saved those out with the 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of at the end, just because of the way that we saved those. By saving those artboards, it basically named them based on the artboard they were on. So if this was on the first artboard, it's legend-01. Now you have to make sure that it isn't looking at this as a sequence. So I want to make sure that that is not checked, and if you need to, you can come in here and just make sure that all of your settings reflect that it is not a sequence. And you may even not want to select them all. Maybe you just want to do one at a time. And that's going to also help you not to have that come in as a sequence. You see how that's kind of forcing it as a sequence just by doing that. So you may want to just pull them in like this, or you could just pull them in by opening up the folder that they're sitting in, selecting them all, and dragging them in. So you could go import multiple files. I think we may have clicked the one right above it. So we'll go to import multiple files and just click, and then it'll automatically open up that window for you. So now you can see that those were not imported as a sequence, just as individual layers, which is what I wanted. Now there's one other thing we need to import, and that's going to be that wave file. So we'll go ahead and bring that in. That's going to be our audio. And if you want to later on, we could import some of the other things, or we could just do it now. We're going to be using that lens flare and also the map world dots. So if you want to, you can bring those in now, or you could just do it later on. It just depends on your workflow. So now we have everything in here. Let's go ahead and get our project panel organized really quickly. So I'm just going to make a folder that's called graphics. And we're going to put all of the Illustrator files and also all of those layers that are in the infographic file folder. We'll put that inside of the graphics folder. So I'll go ahead and toggle that back up. Just drag that into the graphics folder. And we'll select all of these and put that in there as well. Then we can make another folder for comps. So we'll just right click and call this comps, and drag that in as well. Now, I'm not going to need a whole separate folder for audio, so we'll just leave this one at the root. Now, to make my new composition, I'm going to want it to be the length of this audio file here. Now, this audio file is really what we're going to be basing a lot of our animation, a lot of our timing on. So we'll go ahead and just make sure that our composition is the length of that audio by simply grabbing this file and dragging it on to the Create a New Composition button. So now we have a new blank composition that has our audio file in it. And just for you to be able to hear a little bit of a preview of that, I'm going to hit the period key on my number pad, and that has to be on the number pad for you to be able to hear the audio in After Effects. So I'll go ahead and hit that period.
Let's talk about the state of our reefs. An overview. Over 1 million species of plants and animals are part of the reef ecosystem. Coral reefs contain 25...
So I'm not going to make you listen to the whole thing, but that is just a little sample of kind of the audio we're going to be animating this infographic to. So a lot of infographics are animated to audio, not all of them, but I felt like for this project it would be nice just to have that to help us tell that story and keep that pace. And we'll be talking more about pacing and telling the story later on as we work. So one last thing I want to do is just to make sure the rest of my composition settings are set up the way I want them to be. So we have this piece that was just dropped in here. Then we'll come up here to our composition settings and just see what else it was based on. Now these are just the default settings, and I want to change those up a bit. So we're going to change our width from 1920 to 1280, and if you had lock aspect ratio checked, it will go ahead and put that by 720. So that's the size we're going to be working at. I'm also going to change the frame rate from 29.97 to 24 frames per second. There's just a little bit of thinking behind kind of how that looks a little bit more filmic whenever you're working with 24 frames per second, and a lot of motion graphics artists like that frame rate. So we're going to be using that today. I'm not going to mess with the duration because that's how long my audio is, so that's what I was trying to get out of that. But I am going to change the name. So right now that's just defaulting to coral reefs, and I'm just going to hit caps lock and we'll type in main coral info graphic. And that's just going to help for this to be a little more recognizable over in our project panel. So go ahead and say OK. And we can take that and put it in our comps folder. And now you're pretty much all set up. So in this lesson, we learned a few different ways to import. We learned the best way to import that large Illustrator file we created. And in our next lesson, we're going to begin by setting up our title that's going to just kind of start right here at the beginning with our audio. So stick around and we'll learn how to do that in our next lesson.